So the idea of these chats is just to chat, just tell your story. I'll ask you questions, nothing's pre-planned. We decided when starting this whole series the fact that we wouldn't do it planned because we wanted it to be natural. So share your story, introduce yourself to the people at home, and then we'll just talk.
Hi, I'm Helen. I've been with Adam for 16, 17 years, and I've been involved with Saying Goodbye for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how long, maybe 2 to 3 years now? Well, we're 3 years old as a charity, aren't we? So maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
So tell us your story. Tell us your first time you lost a baby, first of all, maybe. How long it taken you to get pregnant, and then what happened?
We've been together a couple of years, and we've been trying, and nothing had happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd ended up going to a doctor, and had ended up getting referred to a fertility clinic, a fertility specialist, and in the end we were prescribed with some fertility drugs to help light the journey along, and very quickly we got pregnant, and that was the first time we'd been pregnant, but very quickly after our positive pregnancy test, within weeks, we started to miscarry, and that was confirmed that we'd lost that first baby.
And how did you feel during that loss? Had you already come to terms with the fact that you were pregnant, etc., or were you still just taking in that you were pregnant?
It was a really hard time because we tried for so long. We were elated as soon as we found out that we had got pregnant, and then to have that loss confirmed so very soon afterwards, within a few weeks, was a really dark time. But on the other hand, we were actually quite hopeful that this is something that happens. This happens to people. It's quite common to lose a baby, and we were almost a bit buoyed up by the fact that we had got pregnant, the fact that we had taken these fertility tablets and we'd got pregnant, that we were quite confident again that we would get pregnant. And I think we just assumed then that it was a one-off, that things would be fine next time round. So we had a very dark period of about 3 or 4 months where we grieved, and then we tried again.
And had you told people you were pregnant?
We had told our immediate family, so we'd told, because they'd obviously been
on the journey with you?
Sitting on that ride with us, waiting for us to get pregnant. So my mum and dad and Adam's parents knew, but we hadn't told anybody wider than that. I clearly then told work because I had some time off, so work were aware. But other than that, we really hadn't told that many people. But what we did do was we told our parents to tell people, so that they knew why we'd sort of almost gone off the radar. And we reached out to some friends that had already had a loss, and we'd spoken through with those. So we were quite tight really about who we did tell. And then we tried again.
Did you have to start the Clomid again?
Yeah.
The medication?
We started Clomid again, and almost immediately again I got pregnant. And almost immediately again I had another loss. And that was devastating. I hadn't expected that to happen. I had really thought that there would be a normal pregnancy, and I couldn't believe, I didn't know anybody that had had 2 miscarriages on the trot. So for me that was a real bolt out of the blue. And we went back to the doctor, and we were told that they wouldn't look at us until we'd had 3 miscarriages, and unfortunately these things happen, and go away and try again. And
was the grieving process very similar to the first time, or was it very different the second time? I
think it was harder the second time. I I had expected everything to go okay.
Yeah.
I had been nervous about a pregnancy, but I had really just expected that it would be a one-off, and that really did hit very hard. So we spent a lot of time, and it took us time to actually try again for another child afterwards.
Yeah.
And yet again, when we tried the third time, again we got pregnant almost immediately and had a loss straight away.
Right.
And I think at that time that was a bit of a difficult one. On one hand, I was almost relieved that somebody was going to like look at me and find out what the problem was, because we'd hit this magic 3.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I was completely and utterly devastated. I wasn't sure really that I wanted to try again after that.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting referred, and we went to back to a specialist. We had a number of tests. We were told that there was nothing obvious that had caused, and we were given. We were told to go away, and they would just check us through.
Right. And what sort of routine did the tests, for anybody who's listening now, who is waiting to be referred, what can you expect when you get referred?
We both had tests.
Right.
So I had a series of blood tests. Adam also had a series of tests as well.
Right.
So they were checking whether there was any genetic reasons that we wouldn't. They were checking whether there was compatibility issues between Adam and I that were causing pregnancies to fail, and all of those tests came back clear.
How long do you have to wait for the results, or how long did you have to wait?
I think we probably took over a couple of months of waiting.
So it's a hard wait, isn't it?
Yeah. We were. It was hard to get the test results back as well, because they were saying everything was normal, but yet something clearly wasn't normal, because we weren't holding on to pregnancies.
Yeah.
So it was a relief in one way that there wasn't something wrong, but on the other hand it was really difficult, because if somebody tells you there's something wrong, you expect them to be able to fix it or help you fix it.
Yeah.
So we couldn't fix this unknown issue that we'd had. And we tried again, and over the next how many years, we lost 14 babies in total, all of them recurrent miscarriages, apart from our last one. And I went through an increasing series of tests. It had been identified that it clearly wasn't anything to do with Adam, so I had more and more invasive tests. I had internal checks. I had every single test that I think you could possibly do, and I tried every kind of treatment that I think you could possibly do as well. So I had taken injections as soon as I knew I was pregnant. I'd injected myself prior to being pregnant, and in the end they felt it felt a very clinical process.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like we weren't having natural pregnancies. We were having very clinical pregnancies that were very clearly monitored, and it didn't matter the amount of testing and monitoring, it made absolutely no difference. We just kept losing baby after baby after baby.
During that period of time, did you ever think about stopping completely, or trying IVF, or going a different route? Was any of that discussed or thought of, or did you just feel you needed to keep going?
There were times when I wasn't sure I could keep going, but ultimately we wanted to be parents, and that was the desire. I couldn't imagine our life without being a family and having our own children. It didn't seem possible that wasn't going to happen. And I was prepared to keep trying. Whilst nobody was telling me that it couldn't happen, I wanted to keep trying. And it almost became it was a very ongoing cycle. It was quite difficult to get off. If I'd said no, and there were times when Adam said, let's just stop now, let's just stop, this is too much on you, it's too much on the pair of us, and it put an awful strain, not only on our own relationship, but on our relationship with like families and friends. We stopped telling them when we got pregnant.
Yeah.
It was they found it too hard to watch us going through, and they didn't know what to say or how to support, because it was something that they hadn't seen that. And although people may have lost, like the family and friends had lost babies, and nobody had ever consistently lost
Yeah.
like we had. And I did feel almost quite freakish in a way, a bit of that we just needed to protect ourselves and keep ourselves away from people, just to protect them from it. They were so gutted for us, and some people couldn't understand why we kept trying. They thought that we should have stopped, but there was no alternative to it. I wanted, and whilst I felt that like I could carry on doing it, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a mum, and if I thought there was an opportunity, I was going to take it.
And because there was no clearly identifiable reason why you couldn't, then that showed you, I guess, in a way, the fact that if you kept on trying, maybe you would get a happy ending.
Yeah.
If they'd told you the fact that you cannot hold on to a baby because of this reason.
And we were searching out all the time.
Yeah.
So there were like new clinical trials that were coming up. There was like new research. So I mean, we travelled. We went to Newcastle. We went to Liverpool. We went to different consultants and different specialists, and had all manner of tests. You know, and we were treated for things that we hadn't even been identified for, just in case.
Right.
So we were consistently pushing for, give us something different, let's try something different this time, if I do it this way. And I did feel really guilty. I felt like, because clearly it wasn't anything to do with Adam, I felt like I had almost in a way stopped him being a father. That I found quite difficult. And I felt very guilty. I felt that there was something clearly wrong with me, and that I needed to keep, you know, pushing through. He wasn't pushing me to do it. He clearly said, like, we don't have to do this. You know, I am comfortable. We can be a couple, and we can be a couple together. I want to be with you. I don't want to be with you and put you through all this. And like, having a child is not so important that I will go away and be with another woman to have a child. But I felt like I denied him that opportunity. For a long time. I felt very guilty about that.
I think a lot of women feel that, and a lot of men also feel like it when they're the known party where a couple can't have a loss. I think it's very hard when it's almost easier when it's a mutual thing, when there's an issue on both sides, because it's easy to support each other through it, isn't it? Rather than feeling like you are the one responsible, even though you're not in control of it. And that's the ultimate thing. You can't do anything about it.
No, and I felt like there were times I'd said to him, you know, if you want to go, and you want to find like a family with another person, then I will give you my blessing that can happen. And he always said like no. He said he would have me like regardless. But that was just so I think that was, I did spend a lot of time feeling very guilty. Feeling like it was my fault, feeling like I was causing it, and that I needed to rectify it. It was a very strange time, and it was strange for Adam as well, because he felt very out of control. He was very supportive, but every time we lost, like, because obviously it's the woman that goes through all the physical stuff. He found that very difficult because he couldn't help. And emotionally, at some points, we were in very different places. He clearly was happy to stop at some points, and I wasn't. And that changed at other times where I was like ready to stop, and he was like, well, look, there's something else that's tried. Do you want to try this? So it was a very tough time.
And how long a period was this?
We probably tried over 8 or 9 years.
It's a long time, isn't it, to be going through so much emotional and mental torture, really, and that roller coaster to be going on. Most people often suffer with these issues for a few years, and then there's some resolution. So to go on for so long, that must have been really tiring.
I think it was tiring, but I think we did want to be parents.
Yeah.
And there was always that one story that popped up in the press where you would see this woman who had had, 14 recurrent miscarriages and had then had a baby.
Yeah.
And there were all these stories of, and I think you probably search those out when you're in that position. You're looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. So we had we had that to hold on to, and then we'd sort of eased off and hadn't really discussed. We didn't discuss that we were going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
We just had given ourselves a break without really discussing the break. And then I found myself pregnant without realising.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't taken any fertility drugs, so I got pregnant completely out of the blue.
Yeah.
It wasn't a planned like everything else had been, and I hadn't realised I was pregnant until I was taken really ill and was rushed into hospital, and it was then identified that I'd got an ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah.
And was rushed into emergency surgery, and after that surgery, that pretty much put the end to us trying naturally for children.
And what happened during the surgery?
I see at the point where I went into surgery, I wasn't even sure that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And I had a fallopian tube removed at the time. And it was confirmed that I had an advanced ectopic pregnancy that was ruptured. And I was very lucky. If I'd left it much longer, I don't know whether I'd be sitting here.
Yeah.
And so when we came out of surgery, I think the pair of us were completely shocked by it. We hadn't expected it, and it had just come a complete bolt out of the blue. And at that point, we both said to each other, there is absolutely no way in the world that we can carry on doing this.
Yeah.
When we get to this point where we hurting, that's, we're physically hurting each other, that can't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So at that point we made the decision that was it. We talked about alternative methods of having families.
Had you done that before this?
Yes.
Or you had?
We talked about IVF, which IVF wasn't an option for us because it wasn't the fact that I couldn't get pregnant, it was the fact that I couldn't hold on to my pregnancies.
Okay. So that was ruled out.
That had been ruled out. We talked about adoption, and I'd always been very pro-adoption, and my father was adopted. Adoption had been a really positive thing in my family, and Adam had real doubts about adoption. He wasn't in the same space as I was.
Mm-hmm.
He was of the opinion that if we wanted a child, we'd have a child together, and he didn't feel that adoption was the right route for us. So that had sort of come off the table. And clearly after the ectopic, there wasn't anything else. So we were trying to resign ourselves to being childless.
Had you looked at surrogacy? Or?
We'd looked at surrogacy, but there was a lot of uncertainty around it.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of tapped back into this thing of whether we did surrogacy as would it be our eggs, would it be somebody else's, and it sort of tapped into some of those things about whether we would biologically be parents or not, and clearly at that point we just weren't in the right space to think sensibly about anything. Mm-hmm. So we left it for a while.
Yeah.
And we did nothing. And I could not bring myself round to being childless. It just wasn't something, it wasn't a place that I felt comfortable with. And it wasn't what we'd fought for the last how many years. We wanted to be parents, that's what we wanted to be.
So you'd made the decision to not try any longer, naturally yourselves. At the point you made that decision, was adoption then on the table, or for that period of time was it very much that you would remain childless? How did you cope? I'm trying to fathom how you got to the place where you both got onto the same page and how you were in that time period of laying down the chance to have children yourself.
We'd started off with we weren't going to have children. We were going to bring ourselves round and we were going to work out how it was that we could live our lives. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't picture it and I couldn't see it. And I started talking to Adam again about adoption. And to start off with, he didn't think that was the right thing for him. And we got to a point where I knew that being childless wasn't the right thing for me.
Okay.
So we were clearly on two different sides of the page here.
Yeah.
And we had a very heartfelt conversation where we spoke about what we both wanted for the future. And I said I just couldn't see me not even trying something different. And I really wanted to go down the adoption route. I really wanted to look into it and I wanted to explore it. And I felt so firm about it that I gave him the option that like for me, I don't think I could live. I don't think I can carry on if we don't at least explore different options.
Yeah.
And that if he wasn't there with me, then that was his choice. But that I wasn't sure that we could continue to be a couple.
Right.
It was that strong a need.
Wow.
And we had this discussion. We didn't talk for a week.
Wow.
We both went away and just thought about what we wanted. And I didn't want to push him into anything. And it wasn't a force, and it wasn't a bribery, and it wasn't blackmail. It was just like a really honest discussion about where we were and what we wanted. And Adam came back and said that he was willing to explore adoption, that he couldn't commit to actually going through with it, but that he would be doing himself a disservice if he didn't explore it as an option.
Yeah.
And we'd had some friends that had adopted and had adopted through a local agency. And so we went and we just made an inquiry, and that was all it was. It was an inquiry. We went and we had a discussion with them, and we talked about how our journey and where we were, and just the fact that we were just interested in it. And they gave us some information, and we went away and we thought about it. And Adam turned around and said, "Okay, let's try this."
So was he equally as committed then, or was it very much let's just take another step and see where it goes?
We went in as a let's take this step by step and see.
Yeah.
Let's check that this is the right thing for us.
Yeah.
And we wanted to commit. If we wanted to commit to it, we wanted to know that it was completely and utterly 100% the right thing.
Yeah.
So we registered an interest, and we were accepted by an agency, and we went through a training course. And what we both said to each other that we either had to be both on the page or not at all, and that was it. We were doing it as a couple, and if one of us felt it wasn't the right thing, it wouldn't be the right thing.
Yeah.
And the more we explored it, and the further we worked with the agency, the more we knew it was the right thing, and it was the right thing for us. And we were approved about a year into it. We got approved on Valentine's Day.
Oh.
Which was the best Valentine's Day present in the world.
Yeah.
And that was just such a hopeful moment for us, because somebody had finally said to us, had recognised that we could be parents.
Yeah.
And we got to a point where we knew that we wanted to be parents, but it was recognised that we could be parents.
Yeah.
So that was the start of our adoption journey, and we were amazed within a couple of weeks of us being approved. We had been given our daughter's profile was sent to us, and within 3 months we had been placed and had been matched, and over the moon that we've got our beautiful daughter.
Yeah. Which is just so amazing. you know, we adore your daughter too. So how do you feel now as a mum to a little girl that hasn't been born from you and Adam, your parents now, and how has that changed your story? Has it diminished that need to carry a child yourself? Has that completely gone? I think most people would be really interested to know whether that happens after you've achieved parenthood via a different channel, or whether that longing still exists.
No, I couldn't feel any more connected to her than if I'd like given birth to her myself.
Yeah.
And she's ours completely, 100%. And it doesn't matter whether she is biologically ours or not. Like, I feel completely connected to her that way. But what I had to do beforehand, and this is how I came across saying goodbye, I had a period before we had just coming up to the point where we were going to be accepted. We knew we were probably going to get approved. And I had a period where I felt I needed to say goodbye to that biological process of trying, and I needed to get myself in a different place. And it was around about that point that I first came across a saying goodbye service.
Yeah.
And I was able to like grieve for the loss of the children that I had tried and like loved and wanted. But almost like it wasn't like I was closing that point down, but I was able to like, I feel that I have a very firm line of like when I stopped trying that way to be a mom, and I accepted that this is the way that I was going to be a mom.
Yeah.
And that's how I crossed that line over there. So for me, it makes no difference. I think it was a very different. I think it took a time to feel like a mom, because rather than like I hadn't gone through. I think somebody once said to me that adoption was like going through the adoption process was like having a pregnancy without an end date. And it did feel like that. All that time, all that work that we did, and all the process that we went through.
Yeah.
The end game was to like have a baby, and we didn't know when that was going to be, or who that was going to be, or how old that child was going to be, or when it was going to happen. We just knew there was going to be something at the end of it, and it just felt like a very different. I'd almost closed off that trying for children that way hadn't happened, and that this felt like a quite natural thing to try for a child a different way.
So tell me some of the things that you experienced through the grieving process that shocked you, things that you didn't know about loss that you experienced.
I think being lonely was like one of the key things that I hadn't realised, that sometimes it can feel a very lonely place, and that people grieve differently and at different times. I found it very hard to express some of it. A lot of the time, I spent a lot of time just shutting it down and trying to like blend it out. And I think I spent a long time with a make-do attitude, just get on with it, and probably trying to gloss over everything, and not really. I was really worried that if I took the lid off and like really looked in, that I might not be able to get out again.
Yeah, that you'd break. I think that's very common, where people feel the fact that once the lid is removed, the fact that they might break or start crying and never stop, or that they're holding it together so loosely, the fact that one small glimpse inside that jar and it's all going to be shattered. Actually, those who have walked through loss and moved through to the other side know that actually isn't true. The fact that by opening that lid actually helps heal the pain.
It's just a really scary prospect to start
very
it off.
frightening.
I felt like in my head, like for a long time, I felt almost like I'd swallowed a whale. and it was so deep and so dark, and I wasn't sure that there was like a bottom to it, and I was so scared that like literally I would look down it and that would be it, that I wouldn't come out the other end of it. And I didn't know a lot of other people in my position, so it was hard to be able to speak to other individuals that had like lost children and understand how that felt. I think you meet a lot of people that are grieving for different things, but it's very difficult. I'd almost felt, and I think the fact that like my children they'd not been named anywhere. We hadn't had a time to like stand. We hadn't had funerals. You know, they were known only to Adam and I, and that was it. I think they were quite forgotten in a way. We were the only people that like really understood and knew, and a lot of people we hadn't even told half of it to, because it was just too hard to have that conversation. It was too hard, and we didn't want to put on other people, because that's a big ask for somebody to understand how you feel.
It is. How did saying goodbye help you?
It just gave me like the time and like the space to sort of stand alongside other people who really got it.
At the service you're talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I went to a service, and I was really nervous about going. And the thing that really got me in the service, and the thing that like made it really real, there were things that I'd done before. I'd like lit candles, and I'd thought the thing that really, really moved me was the opportunity to ring a bell. And that was the first time that my children had a voice. There was a noise, they existed, and like I could hear that. That meant the world. And it was a very odd moment, because it was very emotional, but at the same time it was joyful, because I was actually for once able to celebrate the fact that they existed. And like not only could I feel them and hear them, the other people that sat there heard that too.
Absolutely.
And that for me was such a, I felt like I was not letting go, because I've never let go, and I've never not wanted my children, but at the same time I'm able to move on,
because they'll
and
come
like
with
I
you.
have a different and I feel in a different place totally. It's not like there is a sadness, there's always going to be a sadness and a longing and a loss, but at the same time there was like hope. And like I look at where we are now, and I am in a joyful place. I have everything that we ever wanted. We have an amazing daughter, and we have our life has moved on. And I think it was at that point that I realised that there was the ability to move on, that I didn't have to be in this darkness that I couldn't express. That just the fact of like standing there and somebody else getting it and knowing it, and having that opportunity to say, they were real and they existed, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I think one of our big messages from a charity perspective is the fact that saying goodbye isn't about saying goodbye to the child necessarily that you've lost. In a fact of there's no closure when it comes to baby loss. It's something that will be with you forever. Your child will be with you forever. It's about saying goodbye to the grief that you're carrying and the pain that you're carrying. And what we hope as an organisation to do is lead people to a place where they can smile at remembering their baby and making it part of their story forever, rather than something that's either a secret or something that they keep inside, that they feel able to express it and show this is who I am, and it's what makes me who I am now. And it doesn't make me a sad person, a depressed person, a person who lives in everyday torture. For some people, yes, they are in that place, but for others, they aren't in that place anymore, and they have walked through, and now they are able to remember their babies with a smile. And I think that's what we hope people can grasp and get a message of that, because in your darkest day that's very hard to even believe that's possible, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're able now to like look back and, you know, every single one of those children was wanted and is wished for,
Yeah,
but they brought us to where we are now,
yeah,
and for that we're ever thankful.
yeah,
You know, that is something that was a gift, and it was seeing it from that point of view that we had a gift,
yeah.
and it not to be just the big black hole that we were forever looking down the end of this black hole, not knowing what was going to be at the end of it.
I think the human spirit and the life in general, you want there to be a purpose to everything. And I think when you're going through the darkest days of grief, it's hard to believe that a baby that's been lost early or late could even have a purpose, because they've lived for such a short period of time within you that they maybe you've not known about to anybody other than you or you and your partner. And so what sort of purpose can they have? So I think when you get to a place where you can see that their life has had a purpose, has meant something, whether it's brought you the gift of more joy or being able to appreciate life more, or leading you to the path of, which with you, with your daughter now, that really makes a difference as well in transforming grief, doesn't it? In the fact that you feel that their life meant something, however short it was.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it made Adam and I strengthen a relationship.
Yeah.
It gave us determination. I realised I had more courage than I ever thought I had. And I look back sometimes and I don't recognise the kind of person that I was. I was doing things because I was doing things. But I look back now and I think, you know, we had determination and we had guts and we loved them, and that's why we kept doing it. When people couldn't understand why we carried on doing it, why would you do that to yourself? But we did it because we had a need to do that. We had a need. We wanted, you know, that's how we wanted our lives to be, and that's how it is.
Absolutely. So, thanks so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
And what I'd love to do now is if you could just speak straight into the camera, and there's going to be a woman who's watching this right now, who's at that darkest place that we've both been at. What would you like to say to her right now?
Just, I suppose the thing that I would say is hold on. Like, you're stronger than you think you are. And there are people that get it, that completely understand it. And you will find that. Where you are now and where you can be are two very different things. And it doesn't matter how afraid you are now. I think there's always hope.